Hi you guys, we're on week 8 of The Artist's Way with Julia Cameron, and this week we dealt with perfectionism, risk, transcendence, jealousy, and learned how to use those to our advantage. I know for me, perfectionism has been a huge thing that I've had to deal with and manage, and the tendency crops up in places that are unexpected. And as an artist, it's really one of the worst ways you can use your mental energy. It really does inhibit growth, and it prevents risk. It prevents you from taking risks. I've had a perfectionistic attitude for a really long time. I started in classical music, and that can happen there. There's some traps in perfectionism there, right? Like there's a right way to play things, there's a wrong way. And I also, for voice, I started in opera, and again, it's like, this is how it's done, and there's not that much room for interpretation. So, but I think that I also had the tendency, just like anything else, I also had the tendency that it was really, I had high standards for myself. I always called it high standards, and it's funny that she talks about that. Like, I'll always have high standards, but perfectionism is different because it really prevents you from starting, and it's a huge block because it's really debilitating. It gives you debilitating terror and fear around exploring, and that's what it's about. I always felt like acting and comedy and doing video work was much less pressure, just because I allowed myself much more exploration and play and fun in the endeavor. And I thought that that's what made it a hobby, instead of a career. And, I was just always so hard on myself with singing that, and acting. In every area it came up, but it really does, prevent you from starting, even in practice, even in like spiritual practice. If you have like a spiritual business, it can really prevent you, because you feel like, well, it's the next class, it's the next training that really brings it all together for me, and then I'll be able to move forward and actually start working with people. But what you don't realize is that in that thinking, and I tend to be someone who loves preparation. I do a lot of preparation, but that's different than never starting and never doing it, because sure, give yourself that preparation so you have confidence, but you'll never feel quite ready. It'll never be perfect. The finished product will never feel like it's complete. There will always be room for improvement, always room for tweaks. And Julia talks about that too, where it never quite feels finished. You just decide this is a beautiful way to move on to the next project, right? Like, sure, this is a great way to end it, but you can always hear little nuances that you could have done differently, or read the wording and think, wow, I should have used a different word here, whatever it is. So it's just not healthy. It's not helpful. And for me, it was conditioned. Like, I had this perfectionistic tendency, and my mother really encouraged it, right? She's like, you're just a perfectionist, Rachel, you're a perfectionist. And she would say it like it was a great thing. And so part of me felt like, supported in that, and like it was a really great thing. And in a way, like, the high standards, like, I never really fell flat on my face. Like, I was always prepared, but but I never really let go and transcended. And that's something she talks about too. And as far as risk, you know, I recently learned that, I'm sure it's a theory for now. It's still a theory, I think, that, you know, learners or healers or artists, that type of person that's always studying, that's always, you know, learning something new, always exploring the world and life, they have the tendency to have less dopamine receptors, and they also chase that feeling, that high, right? And so they have more of a tendency to risk, to seek out risk-taking behaviors, and they want the dopamine rush, and, you know, they always want new stimulation. And I thought that was interesting because, you know, I always felt like for performance, it would be I always had to trick myself into feeling like someone had dared me to go out there, because that felt more comfortable to me than the weight of expectation of having 3 months to prepare, or 6 months to prepare. I felt like, or even 6 weeks to prepare. I felt like that was a lot of pressure. But if you just dared me to go out and do it, it gives me the freedom and the license to. So that was an interesting thing. Like, I would always have to trick myself into that. Like, what can you really expect from someone who's just grabbing the mic and singing a song? So that was interesting. And I guess I have taken risks. I mean, I didn't see them as risks, like moving to New York City after living in a small town for the majority of my life. I moved to New York City and lived there for 12 years. And I thought that, you know, I didn't see it as a risk. I thought, how am I not going to make it? You know, I just had so much confidence in myself. And my mother was, I guess both of my parents, but my mother actually showed it, that she was terrified, and just didn't want me to stay there, just wanted me to come home. And she would always say, come home. And it's like, I don't think you understand that, like, this is actually a good thing to me. Like, I like the stimulation to a certain extent. After a while, it got to be too much, and, you know, I'm sensitive, so I had to kind of take care of myself and my health, and still finding a better place. But yeah, it was risky to do that, and it is risky to go out on stage. It is risky to pursue things that a lot of people will tell you aren't worthwhile, that nobody makes it. It's just such a small club, and you're not going to make it. But you're like, you know what? If I just keep going for it, something's going to happen. So I think, you know, artists are, at least artists who turn it into a career, are risk takers by nature. And then for, you know, the transcendence thing, and facing your fears, you know, I just came into Dr. Eric Pearl's work that I talked about last time, and he talks about facing fears every day, and you know, he's talking about it as far as your healing work, which really resonates with me. And, you know, the artists and the healers are on the same path. We're doing the same things, and that became very clear to me when my artistic career or path transitioned into healer, and I'm still doing both, but that transition made it very clear to me that we're doing the same things. You know, we're learning techniques and then transcending them. You know, we have healing work, we have healing protocols, but you're not really a great healer unless you transcend it and listen to instinct and intuition and see what's there and listen. You know, a lot of it is about listening, being an active listener. Listening to the system and seeing what shows up, feeling what's there in the moment, instead of knowing in your head where you put your hands, for example, you know. And just like for an artist, like knowing the melody, knowing the rhythm, knowing the lyrics, but that's not enough to really create a piece of art, right? It's also being in the moment with the energy of the room, listening to the audience, listening to the emotions that it's eliciting there. And then also with Transcendence, I once studied with a teacher. I didn't study with her privately. I've had a lot of private teachers, but I took one of her workshops at the New York Open Center. Her name's Jean McClelland. And I also did some of her group sessions, and she was really inspiring, and she was just, I mean, I considered her like a genius. She'd been doing it for so long, and she talked about connecting to music itself as a way of transcending technique, right? So yeah, there's posture. She also, I think, incorporated Alexander technique. There's posture, there's a way you hold your body so that, you know, it's harder to sing like this than it is when you're aligned, because it affects airflow and all kinds of things. You're singing with your whole body. You're acting with your whole body too. And so working with alignment, but then that alignment also helps you transcend and connect to the energy of music. So when you're singing, and it gives you that, it really connects the phrases, and it prevents, you know, you ever hear, like I do this all the time, when I'm singing a phrase, one word will be accented for no reason. It's like, okay, why is that word? Why is of suddenly like accented? So it really helps to smooth phrases. And I also had a teacher, Ruth Levy. She was my most recent voice teacher that I took private lessons from, and she helped me with phrasing in a way where I was trained in stage and in musical theater, but first, you know, classical, and so I over enunciated a lot, and it just didn't sound very contemporary. So she really helped me with just letting the vowels sing themselves, and kind of not landing on the consonants, but just, you know, letting the vowels sing and I know that sounds obvious, you sing vowels, you don't sing consonants, but in a way that where I wasn't really enunciating, you know, so articulately, so that it didn't sound so distracting, and in a way that, you know, that direction indirectly helped me transcend the phrase. There's a song that she directed me on, We Belong, Pat Benatar's, on my SoundCloud page. I'll link it in the description. But she helped me to sort of transcend this actor trying to sing kind of thing. Like, I have to articulate every word so you understand what's happening in the show. And it's like, okay, you don't really have to do that. So in a way that helped me transcend that habit. And it actually ended up helping me do the same thing of connecting to a higher energy of music, so that it kind of made everything flow, and nothing really was like accented oddly. And we have our weird habits, don't we, as artists? We all have them. And then the other thing we worked on is jealousy, and we kind of looked at people we were jealous of, and why we were jealous of them, and things we could do as antidotes, action steps we could take in our lives, that because it's easy to sit on the sidelines and have ill feelings towards people and say, how dare you be doing that, when really it's just your kind of inner longing, heart's longing to do it yourself. So I can see that. I don't think I have enough time to share mine. Convenient. I'm running out of room on my phone. And then we have some exercises. We're going to do some collage making. Use the mantra this week: treating myself like a precious object will make me strong, because cherishing yourself gives you strength. You know, I'm feeling a lot of compassion for my body. I felt that today. Like I'm slowly growing and learning to ground in and love my physical expression, my physical body. That's unfamiliar territory to me. I was kind of used to that perfectionist telling me that my body was never good enough. I used to, you know, really abuse it. I would starve my body and then over-exercise and diet pills, all that stuff. And yeah, I had a great body. I was really skinny, but I was miserable. I didn't love myself. I didn't, you know, loving your body is part of loving who you are. So it was just really neglected and abused by me. And so no wonder I have had issues with trust and, you know, trusting myself. I totally abused myself. So growing in trust is helpful too. It's so easy to listen to that inner critic and put the critic on the pedestal, which is what the perfectionist does, right? Julia talks about that. The perfectionist puts the critic on the pedestal and thinks the critic has more weight. But it's easy to sit on the sidelines and criticize. But once you start doing the work yourself, you're like, oh, I see. Yeah, it's never perfect. So then you feel more camaraderie towards people that you once felt jealousy towards. You're making a collage with images that inspire you. And so am I. And this week, going to a sacred space, whether that be a church, a bookstore, place in nature, just so you can soak in the silence and the solitude, the healing space. Maybe make that your artist date this week. She said listen to one side of an album, which, how old is this book? Who has an album? But there's my inner perfectionist, sorry. And maybe doodle shapes, emotions, and thoughts that you hear in the music, just as an exercise, and that can actually help you de-stress, you know, when you're in like a hectic place or at work and you just need time out. Listen to music and draw and just freeform art can really help. Wear a favorite item of clothing. Get yourself like a really comfortable pair of socks or gloves or an item that's just, that feels luxurious to you. Give yourself that self-care, that extra boost. I'm running out of time. Okay, that's it. So let me know you're watching and like this video. I'd really appreciate knowing who's watching. And you know, subscribe to the channel. And if you click the little bell icon, it'll give you notifications when a video is uploaded. And next week we will be recovering a sense of strength. So we'll see what shows up this week in that regard. Have a great week. Goodbye, guys.